So regarding hashing of passwords, I will quickly want to say something about it. So why hashing is preferred to encoding is that hashing is a one-way step. So what remains is that when you hash a string or something, there is no way to unhash it, more or less. So, and what this means is that how this works is more or less when if you have to store user passwords on the database, what you have to do more or less is when the user signs up and provides a password, you take the password, you hash it, and then you store it in the database. So that when the user tries to log in, like we did over here already with this login handler, is that we are already doing, we try to get this user over here. I think I can actually just change this to attributes like this, and I think that would, so that way it would actually be generic. So it's not just getting by ID. So I'm just gonna come back to our models user and change ID, this one to attributes. And here we have one more place where we did this, so I can just again change this to get by attributes. So it's not only by ID that you can actually get this, so but yeah, you get the point. So like I was saying, so from here where we provide the email, so now what you would do is you fetch the user and then you get this hashed password that you stored in the database, and then you take the hashed password the user provided when they try to log in, hash this again, and they try to compare it with the one you already hashed that was stored in the database. If it's a match, then the password is correct, and if not, of course you reject the request. So we're going to be really quick about this. So here I'm going to create a new file, and I can call this hash. Again, we are just dumping all of this in here, but in the future we would of course rearrange our code to be much cleaner. So package handler, again I'm going to create two functions that I can already imagine. So one would be hash password, and so this is just going to take a string, so I call this password, which will be of type string. And so what should we do? What this is gonna do is we will, so I call this hash. So this hash, of course I need to use the big crypt library. So I can get this from this guy dot generate from password, and of course I need to turn this string into a byte, and of course it's quite easy to do. I just pass the password like this, and then we have a hash, we have a slice of bytes, and now I need to, I'm just gonna use the default cost here. And so of course this returns, maybe I just expand this a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So this should return two things. It returns a byte slice and an error if there was an error. So here I have my hash an error, and I do some error handling. So if this error is not equal to nil, I return the error. And of course here for now, let's see how this pans out. So we return an error. So I think actually we have to in the end return two things, string and an error. So here I just return an empty string and then the error. And of course if everything goes well, what I would want to do is to return this hash back to the user. So return string, yes of course, and then nil. So we call the passwords to hash. We provide the password that the user has provided when they try to log in, and we encrypt the password, and then if everything goes well, we return this hash as a string, this byte slice as a string. And the next function I would like to put in here would be to verify password. Again, as before, it is going to take a string. So I'll say call this hash. So now in this case, you will be supplying the hash which you got from the database, and of course the password that the user provided. So this would be our password, and we can of course get rid of the first one. It's totally fine. And so this let's just go on and then see what the return type would be like. So again, we use this library and then say compare hash and password, and now we have to provide the hash. So now of course the hash here should be, because this is what we get from the database, now we can actually leave it as a string this way, and what we do here is again we turn this into a bytes, slice of bytes. I'll provide the hash this way, and now we also need to provide the password which also needs to be in the same format as this. So we do the same as we did for the hash, and then we pass the password like this. Undefined wise, yes, this should be hash, not has. And again, this should return two things, or it should just return an error actually. So error, and we can actually use a one-liner, and we say if this error and this error is not equal to nil, then we return the error, otherwise we return nil. So here we just pass error, as simple as that. So these are the two functions we want to provide. And maybe what we can quickly do, I'm going to leave this out for you to integrate this into the solution, or we can see if we do this later in the course. So but to use this, I can maybe just come to this login page, and towards the end here I simply just say okay, what we can also do is we'll get to this user, and then I'm probably going to add a new field here called password, just to show you something. So JSON should be of type. No, I can't put this here because I don't want to add this to our database. I'm just going to put it in here. It's totally fine. We'll integrate this much later in the tutorial. So I say password, and I'll say my awesome password, something like this. So this is the password that the user is providing. And now what I have to do is I'll first hash this password. So I can say handler.hash password, and I pass the password. And of course I get two things back, and I say hash and error. And of course I can do my error handling. So I can just copy this part. I say if this error is not nil, I don't want to return, I'm just going to print this error. I'll just print this error. Okay, and of course if you have this hash, this should be a string. What we can do more or less is just to log. I will just log this here, and I say the hashed password like this, and I put pass the hash. And actually maybe here I can just return because it doesn't make sense actually. And maybe I also just put this in here. I'm just gonna dump this in here anyways. And error, I'm just pass this one here, the error we are getting back, and I can now remove this print statement. So it's totally fine like this. So now we have our hashed password, and the next thing we would want to do, of course, it would be to verify. So I'll say handler.verify password. We pass our hash, which will cause the string, and then we still pass our password, and then we again verify. So if error, this returns just one singular thing, error, and then I'm just going to copy this again, come here, close this off, and then dump this. So if this is the case, I just return this error again. So we can start our function again to verify if our hashing logic works. Mind you, we are hard coding this password, but again, we hash it and then we verify it. So if I go back to our HTTP file, move this a little bit, scroll it over to the side, and then we send our request again for login. And now you see here, we have the hashed password. This is the hash. And for the fact that we are able to get our token in the end, it means, of course, that this whole thing worked up until this part. So the hashing works and the verification works. So of course, like I said, this is very handy in scenarios whereby you have to store user passwords and you would like to store this in the database. It's pretty straightforward. Again, remember, hashing is a one-way process. What it means is if you hash a string, you can't unhash it. There is no method to unhash it. All you can do is to more or less compare it with a new hash, and that's how you verify passwords. And that would be it for hashing of passwords. The next thing, of course, that we have here still on the list is error handling. So we would want to do graceful error handling. And to do that, we can quickly, just so this doesn't get unnecessarily long, what I would again want to do is I come to these handlers and I'll create a new file here. Again, we will sort this all out in the future. Actually, I can put this hash in here. It's fine. Move. And I need to update the package. So the package should now be utils. And that should be fine. Now our login should complain. So this should now come from utils. So I'll just put that in there. That should still be fine. So now I can close this off. So now we go back to our utils, and then I need to create a new file, and I can call this errors. I can call this error.go package utils. So what I would want to do here now, more or less, would be to define a way that I can handle errors. And what I would want to handle here first would be to handle the error from incoming requests, because one thing I can show you already is if I come in here and say emails, for example, and send this request, so what you might have noticed is that this is of course already not behaving as we expected, because we are saying here emails, and over here of course this gets true here, and here also this gets true. And you can already know that this would introduce a lot of problems in the solution, because what we can do is after we do this get attributes, what we can actually do down here is to print to see what the email looks like. So we can say email like this, and let's maybe put some string so we can actually see where this is happening. And then I quickly restart the server and send the request again. So if I send the request again for login, you would see you will notice that of course, even though in the requests we provided emails, but somehow this is also still getting through. So we have to do some modifications to our requests to make sure that of course we are getting what we expect to get, and of course if not, we gracefully handle the error and give a user-friendly response so that they can of course understand what's going on. So to mitigate this error, what I would want to do is to go to the root of our application, and I create a folder called types. Inside of types, I'll create one called requests, and I create another one called responses. So inside of requests, I'll create a file called auth.go, and this is where I will define all requests as it pertains to our user. So here I'll call this package requests. So now I can define a type that would handle, let's say, our login, whatever it is we want to do with our login. So here I will define one. I can call this login request. Of course, it's going to be a struct. And now this is, normally we would expect two things. So one would be our email. I can just call it as username. It's going to be of type string. And in the JSON, we would look for what's called username. And here again, we provide password. Again, it should be of type string. And again, we will call this in the JSON. In our request, we'll call it password. Now, what we would want to do is, of course, to add some binding here. So here I can add binding. I'm going to explain what this means. So here I'm going to say this would be, of course, required. So if you want to log in, you have to provide this email. And not only that it is required, I'm going to say it should be of type email. And apart from being of type email, it's going to be greater than I think I can syntax is this way, greater than 2, and it's going to be less than or equal to 40, like this. So what this does is that we would use a library for more or less binding our requests, and then it would help us more or less to handle these scenarios in a more detailed fashion. So here we are saying that in this request, this email is required, this username more or less field. I expand this so you can see what I'm doing. So the username is required, and not only that it is required, it has to be of type email, and it should be greater than, I think it should actually be like this, and greater than 2 characters or less than or equal to 40 characters. And I can actually maybe just copy the same and do the same for our password. And the only thing is it's not of type email because it's going to try to validate our email for us. And so apart from that, if you also have a field, let's say something that says maybe role, and this is again, let's say of type string, so we can pass the JSON parts, we can call this role. And when it comes to binding, what we have to do now is we have the option of using something like say, we can say one of, and we'll put equal to, and now we provide so if there are things like maybe admin, and there is also one that maybe say something like come on, user, more or less, if this field needs to be one of a couple of things, you can actually do it this way, one off, and then you provide the things that it has to be like. And we've already seen greater than or equal to, you have email and stuff like that. And so, but we don't need anything like this, so we can get rid of this for now. And what we now have to do more or less would be to define how we handle these errors. So I need to go to our utils, go to the error, and then here I have to define, I would like to define 2 functions more or less. So the first one will be, I can call this get error message. So this is what's going to give a user a more meaningful message. So I can call this field error. This should be of validator, so I will get this from validator. This is of course the package I'm talking about, and then provide, this should be of type field error, and it should return a string. And now what I would want to do is to switch with this with the tag of this field error. So I can say field.tag, and now so this is where we handle all these tags here that we provided. So required, blah blah blah. So now I can start with, of course, to show you, I'm going to add a lot of conditions here just so you see what's possible. So if we have a field called optional, in this case it's okay, so we don't have to return any error. So here I'm just going to return an empty string. So another case would be if it's an email field. If we say that we need to provide an email, so we will need to return an error message, and what that message should look like would be something like the email address must be provided, something like this. Or we can say to make it more descriptive, we say this field must be a valid email address, something like this. And another case I would want to handle, of course, would be like we already used one of it, we say one off. So if we have one off, here we can say the message we want to return is to say something like this field must be one of the following. And maybe here you can provide those lists. You can say admin, I don't know, depending on your use case, user, whatever, blah blah blah, etc. This is also a role, I don't know. And then apart from one off, we have also a case where we expect a field to be from the alphabet. So this would be of type alpha. And again, we say return, and what we can say to the user is this field should be we can say this field should something like should contain only English alphabet, something like this. And of course we have one that says we already talked about, we've seen this one already, this LTEE less than, and here we can again return something that says this field should be should be of course less than, and then here we can of course we have something like params. We can pass this here, and we can actually do same for the other one. You can already guess it. So this one, so we say GTE, and here we say it should be greater than. And of course we have also mean. If you have like a number of fields, we can handle means as well. And here we can say something like this field should not be less than, something like this, and then again we add our params. And of course we can again copy this and do same for max, and change this to max. And now here say should not be greater than this, something like this. And if it doesn't match any of my errors, here I can just return maybe some like unknown error, I don't know, something like this. So this is the function we wanted to create. So this is going to help us handle these tags we put here. So this should be GTE, and then sorry, and this should be LTE, like this. It's going to help us handle these fields if they happen to be missing. So we have this over here. Now what I need to do is I need to create a function that's going to help me format this error. So I can create a function called format error, and it's going to take a Gin context. Going to take a Gin context and of course an error. And it's actually not going to return anything, it's just going to return to the user completely. So I can return I'll define our error here. So I can define my validator errors, and this would come from my validator.validation errors. And now I have to check the type of error, so I can do this from errors package, and then I say error if the error is of type validation error, and now we have to handle it. So what if it is of type validation error? So what I can also need to do is I need to maybe define a type of error that I can return to the user. So I can say error message like this. and it's basically just gonna maybe contain two things. I say field, which is gonna be of type string, and a message. Of course, it can be a string, and of course I need to just provide some JSON attributes, so this can be serializable, so I call this field. And here as well I provide a field and I call this message, so that if my error is of type validation errors, what I'm just going to do is to create more or less mash out this into what I have. So here I can use the make function to map my errors into, of course, my message, error message, and then I need to provide the length of my validation errors. And now I need to now go through each of my errors and then handle them accordingly. So I have my iterator and I have my this field error. So this is where I'm getting my field error, and then I need to range through my validation errors. And now what I need to do is more or less append to this message. These are slice of error messages that we created above, and here I can just provide my error message this way, and my field would be from this guy, and now my message will come from get error message, and here I'll just simply pass my FE, as simple as this. And of course, when we have all of this, I want to just completely terminate the request, so I can say abort with status JSON, this one, yes. And now I need to provide a status code, and I can just say bad request, and then I provide my error this way, and I can say error, and now I just provide my out this guy like this. If that's the case, of course, and then we simply return, but otherwise we simply just again abort the request anyways, and still use the same method that we used above and say HTTP. In this case, of course, we have no clue what the problem is, and here we can simply just return the error that we are getting back. And here we say error, and we simply append the error that we are getting from this function. So these are more or less the two functions that we want to create. So one would be for us to handle the field errors based on the tags that we have defined in here, and the second one, of course, would just be to take this error and format it in such a way that's going to make sense to the user. And of course, to use this, all we have to do more or less is to come back to our login page, as you can see over here. So what we can now do is more or less we come over here, and now we can of course this would be in our utils. So we have utils dot format error, so we pass our gin context and we pass the error that we got, and now we can actually just take this one out completely. So what we have to do, of course, we are not going to use this one, so I'm just going to call this one user, and then I have another one, I call this rec. So this would come from our requests, that's login request like this. And then what we have to do is we come over here, we can now say say user.email would be coming from our request that's username like this. And so here, of course, we now have to replace this part with the user, so this should come from here. And yes, so this should be fine. So now we would be using the one that we created to handle the incoming requests. So we restart our server this way, give it a couple of seconds, and now it's up, and now we can send our request again. And now you see over here we get like meaningful error. So here it says the field username, of course it says here unknown error because this is not provided anyways. So if you look at what's happening now, if we go back here, you would see that this request is not even passing through anymore. So it just gets blocked over here, and it's always telling us bad request. And then if you look here, the error says failed username, and then it shows our unknown error over here. So what we can actually do here is we can now maybe modify this for our use case, and we can say this field is missing and must be provided, something like this. And so now if we compile our code and go back here and send the request one more time, and now it doesn't just tell us, and it tells us this field is missing. What we can already do is to provide our password, and send our request one more time. Now it says password is missing, so now we can just put something here, some password. And now what we can already actually also do is to test if it also recognizes our valid email. So I can maybe remove this dot here and send the request, and now it tells us this must be a valid email address. Like, you can already see how useful this is. And if you are building APIs where you're collaborating with a couple of other developers, you can already see how useful this would be for them, because now they get descriptive email messages that tells them exactly what the problem is. Anyways, we can now change this, of course, to what it should be like, and then send our request. And now everything should work fine. So if we now go back to our login, we actually don't need to do this part anymore. We can actually just get this from our request password like this, and of course request password. So as you can already imagine, we are not just making big changes, we are incrementally making our changes, just so you see how all of this is coming together. And then if we of course run our server one more time and then send our request, everything should still be fine, and our password is successfully being hashed, and we don't have this error again. And if we change this now, for example, say usernames, and send a request, it complains right away. It never gets through. If you already noticed initially, this was getting through, but here it doesn't pass anymore. It has to be username, and if we somehow provide an invalid email address and send a request, it blocks the request as well. So that should be it for this video. So if you look over here, we've tried to cover most of this. We covered this, authentication and authorization. And the only thing that we left out for now will be session management. We will take care of this in the next video, because for the next video we don't have so much to talk about, so we can quickly just push this down here. And actually what I can just do is maybe just cut this out and bring it down here, and over here I can maybe leave this under authentication. It's totally fine. And so thank you so much for being part of this journey. I have to cut the video here because it's getting longer than we anticipated. But anyways, I'm really glad that we successfully completed most of what we wanted to complete today. Thank you again for being part of this journey. Like I promised you, this course is supposed to really help you bring your backend development game with Golang to bring it up to speed, and that's exactly what we're doing. And yeah, please, again, feel free to take your time. If you have to pause, rewind at any time to go back and maybe look through the video to really understand what's going on, of course, feel free to do so. If you have questions, please just drop them to me. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And yeah, we'll draw the curtains here for today, guys. And again, if you are new to our channel, of course, just go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll be notified each time we upload a new video. And yeah, like always, until next time, have a lovely evening, and bye bye.